What kind of literary genres do you know? If you've been to English Literature 101, you should remember at least one or two. What kind of literary genres exist out there? Poetry, right, is one. Another one? Fiction, non-fiction, science fiction, crime stories, right? Romance novels, comedy, historical writings, yes. So there are many styles of writing. You can write the same message and make it into a romantic novel, like David's story and Bathsheba. You can make a story out of that will make you blush, or you can write a story, be a crime story. Who killed Bathsheba's husband? You can turn any kind of narration into a poem or into a historical novel. And one of very old literary genres is called apocalyptic writing. Apocalyptic sounds scary. Usually it means the end of the world. The sky is falling, right? This was, by the way, a very apocalyptic writing cartoon. The sky is falling. But it's an ancient style of writing that has one purpose: not to scare the living hell out of you, to the contrary, to uplift your spirit in times of trial and persecution, to tell you that even though the horizon is still dark, there is hope, that one day a star will rise. Book of Daniel, from which our first reading comes, is a great example of apocalyptic writing. Why? Because the author was writing in the middle of 6th century BC, when Jews were kidnapped basically to Babylon. They lived far away from their home country, and they were dreaming of returning, and yet king after king would not allow them to go back to Judea. So Daniel writes in apocalyptic style, saying, a Prince Michael will come, and he will liberate you, he will guide you. Another apocalyptic example is in today's Gospel of Mark. In the 13th chapter, Mark makes Jesus go all the way apocalyptic. The language is, of course, very scary. The stars are falling down, the moon is losing its colors, and everything is looking like the end of the world. But even in the 20th century, apocalyptic writing was very popular, especially when Hitler was coming to power, and it looked like the world is ending as we know it. There was a British writer who you know for certain who specialized in apocalyptic writing, J.R.R. Tolkien. Think about it, about the stories he created. It's almost like from the book of Revelation. There are dragons flying around, monstrous creatures, and tiny, insignificant hobbits who change the fate of humankind and elf kind and hobbit kind. So Tolkien is using the same genre, apocalyptic writing, as Daniel did and Mark in that 13th chapter, and of course the Revelation of St. John is a great example of apocalyptic writing. What they all have in common is that things were not looking good. In book of Daniel, Jews are in slavery in Babylon. When Mark is writing the gospel, Christians are persecuted. The emperors, who are gods, by the way, most of them have declared themselves to be divine. The emperors, divine gods, rulers from Rome, are persecuting Christians. And in Tolkien's time, Hitler is becoming a very tangible and real danger, not only in Europe, but all over the world. So in these dark times, great storytellers create apocalyptic narratives. They say, even though it's scary, even though there are monsters all around you, at the end, light will triumph. At the end, goodness will conquer evil, even if it happens by a baby child, like in the book of Revelation, or by a stupid hobbit, like it happens in the books of Tolkien. You see, apocalyptic writings are not meant to scare us. They are meant to uplift our spirits, to give us hope that things will get better. And to make yet another point, Mark is going out of his way to speak of all the idols that were very much reigning and popular at the time of the writing. If we read the English translation, it looks like nothing important. But look for a moment. It says, the sun will be darkened. In English, the sun is just the sun on the sky, right? But the Greek word for sun is Helios. Do you know mythology? God Helios. If you spell Helios with capital H, it's an idol. The God who was God of sun will be darkened. And then moon, in Greek Selene, is the god of moon, the goddess, of moon. Mark is saying all these gods that are kicking your behind right now will be diminished. He says stars will fall down and lose their brightness. And the Greek word for stars is asteria. Again, in Greek mythology, there were creatures, there were goddesses that oftentimes would tell nocturnal oracles. The asteria stars are not only stars on the sky, but they are goddesses. And finally, heavens, in Greek, Uranus. Have you heard of Uranus? Uranus was a god of heavens, a god of sky. And Mark says, and even that guy, even that god who's everybody's afraid of, will not be able to overcome you. Mark is going out of his way to name multiple idols in that short passage to make a point that even though the people who believe in these powerful gods, they will not triumph. Because at the end, the Son of Man will be reigning. And in Greek, the Son of Man is the son of human, basically, anthropos. Have you heard of anthropology? It means the science of human culture and behavior. Marx says, human person will replace all these false idols. Jesus, who was a God become human, will be in the center and he will triumph. It's very clear message that Mark's Jesus is giving us hope. Mark's Jesus is saying, even though right now you are being kicked over and over again, all these other idols will be replaced by a humble human, by the Son of Man. And think for a moment about all kinds of idols that are threatening us today. What kind of false gods are reigning all over? The mighty dollar, right? If you walk into some banks, they look better than most churches. Marble floors, columns, big windows. The banks have replaced our temples, and we worship the mighty dollar. The Wall Street has become the new Vatican. That's where everybody's praying to and checking every day, how is the market doing? We used to check our Bibles. Now we check the updates from Wall Street. There are so many other idols besides mighty dollar. The God of false sense of security and safety. We are so afraid that we want to create a sense of safety. So we idolize everything that gives us the sense that we are safe. Not to mention sex and other idols that are present in our lives. But Mark's Jesus says at the end, even though you might be oppressed by these all kinds of idols, by Uranus, by Helios, by Dolarus, all these gods will be diminished when a humble human will take center stage. My friends, just like the Christians of the first century and people in Great Britain when Hitler was rising to power, we have to realize what is really important in our life. And the important part is another human being. What you do to one of these least of my sisters and brothers, you did to me. When we put a human person in the center of our lives, when we see the goodness and divinity in every person, in every man and woman, that is when our apocalypse will give us hope for better future. Amen.